with respect to the divisions that you face in Baltimore and in other places as well, including Wilmington, Delaware. Next is Senator Ricketts. He'll be succeeded by Senator Sullivan.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for joining us here today. I'm going to take it from a little bit different perspective as a governor, a former governor, who actually did permitting reform in my state and saw the actual real-world experience of a variety of different agencies that were working on it. I can tell you that when it doesn't go well, we see a lot of really bad consequences. For example, the Army Corps of Engineers took about 6 years to get a permit for the Papio, Missouri Natural Resource District to raise the levees around Offutt Air Force Base. If you're not familiar with Offutt Air Force Base, that's where Strategic Command is located, which controls our nuclear forces. And they got the permit in time to start construction in March of 2019, just when we had a 500-year flood that then did $1 billion of damage to the state. So if they had just gotten the permit done in 4 years, like we were talking the average was, we could have been able to avoid that. But their unnecessary delays caused $1 billion and threatened our national security. So the approach, so we've seen what happens when it can be bad. I can cite other examples where we've had outcomes. And Ms. Goldfuss, I can tell you in my state, when it comes to transmission lines, that frankly, it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife that has been the holdup, not the state. And but I would emphasize that I think the key in all this, which you've been talking about, is early engagement with the community, because I think it actually leads to faster completion times when you engage the community early, because then you don't get all the opposition when you're trying to actually do the siting and get everything else done. So I certainly emphasize that. What I want to emphasize is what we did at the state of Nebraska with regard to Lean Six Sigma. It's a process improvement methodology, whereas you map out the process steps it takes to be able to get a process done. It could be anything. We did it in a number of our agencies. I think we did in 18 different agencies. We had 900 different projects that saved our teammates about 900,000 hours of their time and about $100 million in hard savings. Specifically in our Department of Environment and Energy, we took on our air construction permits. And so we mapped out the process. It was 110 steps long. Only 4 of those steps actually added value. We were able to cut about 88 of those steps, and this is without changing any sort of environmental requirement. We were able to take the process it takes to issue those permits down from roughly about 190 days to, we started that process in 2016, and it got down to about 65 days by the end of 2019. So cut the process time more than half. We had no authority to change any sort of requirement with regard to what companies had to comply with. This is just making the process, streamlining it, and making it easier. So that's one of the things, Chairman, I think that we need to think about as we're talking about permitting reform, is there are ways to do it that have absolutely nothing to do with loosening any sort of restrictions, but just of the process itself to be able to make it better. And we ought to focus on that as we're thinking about permitting reform. So, and actually, not only was it good for the applicants to be able to get those things faster, Yahoo was looking at expanding their data center in the country, or they're looking at the variety of sites, and they actually picked Nebraska to expand it and invested $20 million because of the ease of getting the permit done in a way that allowed them to have that predictability and the certainty you were talking about, Mr. Chairman. So I'll start with you, Ms. Goldfuss. Have you heard of Lean Six Sigma or process improvement methodologies?
I've not heard of the, what was it,
Lean Six Sigma.
Lean Six Sigma, no. But I would like to, I really appreciate the way you laid that out, because one of the success stories was the creation of the Federal Permitting Improvement Council inside the federal government, which is designed to look at where are those bottlenecks and what are the steps, and have a lead agency, if you will, that can engage with the project proponents so they know who are they talking to. It also produced a dashboard that gives you transparency into what those steps are. So I think there is a way to kind of chart this out, and I think with the dollars that were approved in IRA, there's money that can be used for technology and to really help FIPSI and the federal government get some of those efficiencies you're talking about.
Yeah, great. Mr. Timmons, I'm sure you're familiar with Lean Six Sigma, coming from a manufacturing background.
Yes, Governor and or Senator, I wanted to point out that
He
governors
has
really
been
do
called
have,
worse. Believe me, he's been called worse.
Much worse.
I always call you Governor too, Mr. Chairman. Governors really do have a unique perspective. I had the opportunity in the 1990s to serve as chief of staff to then Governor George Allen of Virginia, and one of the things that he took on was regulatory reform. We modeled our effort after the successful efforts in the state of Delaware, where then Governor Carper had issued an executive order to create a task force to review permitting reform there as well. Governors are leading the way, truly, and your process improvement is one that is cited often for how we can maintain our very strong environmental standards while at the same time improving the process and making it much more efficient.
So you would agree that by looking at things like Lean Six Sigma as part of the solution for permitting, we
Absolutely.
can actually help speed up the time it takes to get the permit without changing any sort of, without losing any sort of regulation with regard to quality and protecting the environment?
Yes, sir. And you also referred to it as process improvement, process improvements, and whatever you call it. If you can streamline the process and you can look at the outcomes and not worry about duplication and overly aggressive processes, you get a lot more done, and you get it done better.
Great, thank you. I yield back.
You bet.